So we're going to begin with an interview of Brigadier General Reserves Shumel Tzuker. He is somebody who you will have noted from his bio, has a wealth of experience. He's an extremely candid, open fellow. We traveled to Washington, D.C. together some months ago about the New State Solution. And I can say that whenever you were there with me, I felt strengthened and challenged at the same time, which is quite a rare combination. And I appreciate you being here, especially on Chag. And I'd like to begin just a little bit by setting the stage. I'm going to interview the General for about 40 to 45 minutes and then open it to your questions. You can ask about anything. Some of the things that the General says you may agree with, others you will not agree with. But the point is to have an open discussion and conversation. And I don't know what most of the answers are going to be. So I don't know where I stand.
As usual.
As usual, exactly right. I would ask you to speak loudly so that everybody can hear you. And I think I'll begin by asking you to tell us a little bit about your background, putting the military aside, because we're going to get into that. Where are you from in Israel? What's your background religiously? Where do you live now? Children, grandchildren? Let us know a bit about you.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you. I prefer to speak Hebrew because my English is not so good, but that's the situation. Okay, I was born in Israel. I'm 70 years old. You are younger than me. I was born in Ashkelon. Ashkelon is a city, nice city. You can read about this city in the Bible. It's about 15 kilometers from the Gaza Strip. And I'm married with 3 children. The eldest one is almost about 47 years old. 6 grandchildren. Served in the military in 18 years old, like everybody in Israel has to go to serve in Israel. It's a problem for the mothers, you know. Every mother knows that in 18 years old, her child or my children will serve in the military, and we are not playing games in the military in Israel. That's the situation. Started in a reconnaissance commando unit named Shaked that belonged to the southern party in Sinai. Was wounded few times. My left hand is not something like that. And from then, I had the privilege to be the commander of the troops in every front line, meaning in the West Bank, in the Gaza Strip, and in the northern front line. But in those times, we have been inside the territories, meaning in Gaza Strip, we have been inside. The troops were located inside Gaza, meaning in the refugee camp like Jabalia, like El Burej, those places. And in Lebanon, in the security zone, when we have served in the security zone inside, meaning in strong points like Beaufort, Lat, names that I don't know if you are familiar with them, but we have been inside. There is a big difference between being inside or being outside. Today, the troops are located outside, in the periphery, not inside. It's easier today to enter to the Gaza Strip is a big operation. In those times, we have been there. And I was retired about 10 years ago, maybe a little more. And after that, I served in the Ministry of Defense as the deputy of the Director General, and I was the head of the procurement directorate, meaning we purchased, we bought everything for the military. The military was the client, from vegetable, shoes, and submarines, and the airplane, and the F-35I, and so on and so on and so on. Today I'm retired, about 2 years I'm retired. I hope to be retired, but it's not like that, because I'm today a chairman and a CEO of 2 industrial companies, give lectures in Bar-Ilan University, and advisor for some kind of companies. That's, in short words, my background.
Thank you. So let's get into a couple of the points, because what I want you to do is to bring some clarity and crystallization to some points that haven't been mentioned. So on day 1 in Israel, or day 2 in Israel, they were briefed by General Tibon about Lebanon, on the Lebanese border in Mitzpeh Dado. And there he spoke about the doctrine for the future, what will happen in the next round, or what could happen in the next round.
He knows about that?
He knows about that, and he actually, he of course is speaking about a border with a country that we have been out of since 2000, since we withdrew in 2000. Before then, as you said, we were in there. Then they've also gone down to the Gaza Strip and had a briefing overlooking the Gaza Strip, which is a place that we've been out of since 2005. So let's start with
briefing.
That was Avishai Levi from Tel Aviv.
What they are knowing about Gaza Strip?
Well, this is actually the point I want to get into. So the general, if you heard, said, "What does the pilot know about the Gaza Strip?" Now, this is actually very, very important, because you have a particular view on how to deal with the Gaza Strip militarily, and it seems to be that the doctrine of the IDF is to primarily use the Air Force when it comes to dealing with the Gaza Strip. So let's start with Gaza. As you said, you were a division commander inside the Strip. What's the main advantage of having troops inside the areas when it comes to intel and operations? Start with Gaza, and then we'll move maybe to Lebanon, if you would.
To be inside or outside, it's a political question. To control what's going inside, you have to be inside. But there are some other aspects to come to decision to be inside or outside. Inside, you can collect information, intelligence. It's easier. You are involved. You can talk with the Palestinians. I remember myself in between some kind of extreme situation. I talk with the young people, the young Palestinians, having the idea of them, what they think about Israel, what they think about themselves. So, and in the same time, you can be heated easier by them when you are inside than outside. But the facts are that today when we are outside, we are hit by rockets, our cities, our civilians. I don't know another country around the world that suffered from rockets, and only a few months ago we suffered from about 750 missiles, rockets from the Gaza Strip. We seem to be the superpower in this area. We know we can destroy Gaza Strip in few, I don't want to say seconds, but in few hours, few days, but there is the big limitation of the power. We cannot do it. We have the capability to do it, but we are not doing it. And the question is how the other side that knows that we can do it, there are not afraid to shoot missiles to the country that can destroy them in few hours. And that's the big question. I don't remember when Israel or the IDF really succeeded to win the battle. And you know, this a very, very strong sentence here in Israel, because if you ask the politician, everybody say that we are in the safe side, that deterrence is the most important thing. But in my opinion, to win the battle, you have to be with the boots on the ground. And long time, we didn't have the opportunity to see it. I remember the Six-Day Wars or Yom Kippur War. You can see a lot of Arabs, a lot of people, a lot of their leaders going out with a white flag and with hand up, surrounded. And today, I don't remember a picture like that. Today we prefer to use the Air Force, to use the artillery, and not to use the army. And the question is why? Somebody has an idea why we don't use the army. We put a lot of money, many tanks, and we don't use the army. Why? Somebody can help me because I don't know the answer. Please.
Sir, Isaiah Sampson from the United States Air Force Academy. I think maybe one of the reasons is because tired of people dying, maybe.
So, okay, thank you.
Chase Goldstein from the Virginia Military Institute. Maybe the outside world likes it better when there's not ground troops in the enemy area. They like seeing airstrikes better.
Okay, please.
To VMI.
It seems that they didn't spend time enough yesterday at night because
Because ground troops are easy for media to pick up on, and it fits the occupation area better.
Thank you. It's a question that we are asking ourselves. We are asking our leaders. And my answer, and I am now a private person, it's a question of the decision maker. The decision maker, the government, the politicians are afraid to be criticized when the media brings some bad pictures, like some soldiers that were killed or kidnapped, and they try not to be in situation to explain the people in Israel why a tank was exploded and there are 2 soldiers that are missing. And to come a decision like that, you know, it became in Israel that an Israeli soldier that was kidnapped become to be a strategic issue in Israel. One soldier, and of course, it's a bad situation. Nobody wants that his child or her child will not come safe back home after serving the military. And everybody doesn't want to come to a situation like that. But everybody has to know that the military is not a game. Like, like business. When you are in a business, you have to know that you can lose some money. And when you are going to a combat field, you have to know that in a situation like that, something bad can happen. And nobody in the government, in his term, doesn't want to be in a situation that has to explain why in his position some of the soldiers were killed or were kidnapped. And that's why they prefer not to use the ground forces, and they prefer to use the Air Force. It's more safe, or the artillery, meaning to have the battle from a distance and not to be involved with combat field and so on and so on. And Gaza Strip, for example, is a good example. It's a very, very simple situation for the IDF. The territory of Gaza Strip surrounded, it's a very close territory. On one side the sea, the other side Egypt, two lines Israel with fences, so that you can isolate this territory, not like Syria and not like Lebanon. In Syria, they can have some enforcement from Iran, from Iraq. In Gaza, nothing can happen. They don't have missiles, anti-aircraft. So it's easy for the IDF to do whatever they want to do. And the last war took us about 52 days to come to the end of this operation. 52 days. It's impossible to think that this country deals with the Gaza Strip with a simple territory about 52 days. And that's why. Because we were afraid is not the right word, we prefer to use the Air Force, to use the artillery, and with a big limitation of power, because we don't want to kill innocent people. Before shooting a missile from our Air Force, we shoot a missile to give a signal to the family in the building, in the Gaza Strip, to run away, because in few seconds we are going to destroy the building. That's what happened. And it took us about 52 days. So Gaza Strip, in my opinion, we have to come to a situation that they are afraid to shoot one missiles towards Israel.
So thank you. I think everybody's clear that you're being very candid and very open about this, and I hope you'll continue. And I want you to sharpen something about this, because while we are putting forward a strategy or even a non-strategy that you are not satisfied with, they seem to have a series of goals and aspirations that focus around rockets and also recently tunnels. Now, tunnels have been referred to during this tour, but I don't think it's been accurately referred to in terms of what the goals are of these tunnels that have burrowed into Israel and close to Israeli towns. I want you to talk about what would happen were those tunnels to meet with success, or the plan behind them to meet with success from the Israeli point of view. But also please define what is the goal of this tunneling? What are they trying to achieve when they burrow into Israel?
You know, the tunnels is only a road, a way to try to kidnap civilian or kidnap soldiers, because they know exactly to kidnap a soldier, it's like a victory for them. Because when something like that happens, it becomes, as I told you, a strategic issue. The media will talk about it. We have to pay a lot to bring the hostages back to Israel. So try to imagine before the last war, when the almost succeed to bring the tunnel to a kibbutz, to a village or settlement not far from the Gaza Strip. And try to imagine that in Friday evening, when the people in the kibbutz are eating their dinner on Shabbat, suddenly 15 Palestinians, 15 terrorists succeeded coming with the tunnels in the middle of the dining room and kidnapped about 5 children, killing about 10 people. For them, it's a big victory. They don't have to win the big battle against Israel. They have to take about 5, 10 people, and that's for them, it's a big victory. Because they know that in a case like that, the government can fall, a lot of criticism inside the media, so the goal of the tunnels is not to win Israel, to trying to take some kind like Shalit, one soldier that was kidnapped, and you can imagine what happened in Israel when they succeeded with a tunnel to kidnap one soldier. And with this tunnel, they tried to enter some villages and to take some civilians and of course to kill some civilians from Israel. That's the goal of them. And what we are doing is we try to block this tunnel. It's not, with this tunnel, they are not going to win the battle, but they can win some kind of important points in this kind of battle against Israel.
But if those tunnels meet with success, in other words, supposing they enter a yishuv, a community close to the Gaza Strip, and they kill women, children, men, and they kidnap a number of those women, children, men into the Gaza Strip. Incidentally, ladies and gentlemen, you should be aware that these tunnels, when they were unearthed, they were found to have sedatives within them. People who were moving were found to have plastic handcuffs. The goal was specifically to kidnap, and I believe specifically over the New Year's celebration a couple of years ago when everyone was at rest. What would the IDF reaction be in that case? And does it require some sort of dreadful circumstance for the IDF to finally react to what's going on in the Gaza Strip?
No, we don't have a good solution, really, in a case like that. Meaning, for example, try to imagine that I am a soldier, that I'm sitting in an observation point or sitting in a tank and trying to protect the border, and suddenly I see some terrorists succeeded taking one of my soldiers and begin to escape to the Gaza Strip. What I'm doing? I begin open fire. If I open fire, I will kill my friend. I will kill an Israeli soldier. Nobody say clearly. Nobody. I am talking about the commanders. There is no a clear command what the soldier has to do in a case like that. So in a case like that, the commanders or the prime minister rely on a decision in the ground of a soldier. If I open fire and kill the terrorist and kill the Israeli, maybe it's a good solution for the politician, for the government, because there is no case. You can explain what happened, and that's it. But in a case that it succeeded to take some kind of civilians, now it's only a question of negotiation, because if something like that happened, in the first seconds, I'm sure that immediately will begin to shoot the artillery, to send the UAV, to send the Air Force, and destroy, many buildings, and destroy a quarter from Gaza Strip. But after a few days, we cannot destroy, we cannot kill innocent people. And now we enter to a phase with negotiation that can take about 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and that's what happened in a case like that.
So,
There is no a clear solution in a case like that, and they know that this is what we call the ace in a poker game for them.
the ace in the hole.
Yeah.
So I want to just clarify this. In 2006, just before the Second Lebanon War, there was a soldier by the name of Gilad Shalit who was kidnapped. This is the soldier to whom General Tzuker is referring. On the border with the Gaza Strip. His name was Gilad Shalit. He was held in captivity, was it for 5 years, 6 years?
Yeah.
And there were how many prisoners, including murderers, who were released from Israeli prisons to bring back? It was over 1,000. I think it was 1,200. Rosita, you might remember the number. So that's what the general's referring to when he says that one soldier becomes a strategic asset for the Hamas. Now, I want to move a little bit. By the way, there's a lot I'd like to ask you about. I'm not going to get to it all, and I want to make sure that our guests have the opportunity to ask you. I do want to ask you about your frustration with a 52-day campaign in the Gaza Strip. Tomorrow they'll be hearing from Brigadier General Zvika Haimovich, and Brigadier General Haimovich is the immediate past commander of the Air Defense Forces. So he is responsible for the Iron Dome, David Sling, the Arrow system, and so forth. Now, the Iron Dome is one of the most celebrated developments for the State of Israel and the Israel Defense Establishment in recent memory. It's a great story. It's a great story in Israel. It's a great story in America. It's a great story about the coordination and cooperation between the two. But I look at the Iron Dome in my own personal perspective and I wonder, is this a strategic asset or is this a strategic impediment? Because it can seem to one who observes these campaigns in the Gaza Strip that the Iron Dome leads to a position of what's called analysis paralysis, where there is endless amounts of time for politicians to think about, including in the Security Cabinet, what should be the plan, because rockets are being fired in the air, but they're not hitting civilians. And therefore you go from wars or campaigns that typically would last 6 days, 20 days, 30 days, to a non-conclusive campaign, such as Operation Protective Edge, that lasted 52 days against the same enemy with the same lack of conclusion, with the same foreboding sense at the end that we will be back there again in 2 years or 3 years. What's your view on the Iron Dome? Is it a strategic asset or liability?
For clear, it's a strategic asset.
So tell us.
It's a strategic asset because the government have the opportunity not to react immediately with full power, because it gives them the opportunity to think, to come to a decision, not to react after 700 missiles. And because of the Iron Dome, because that nobody was hit extremely, and I say nobody, I'm meaning it was not a disaster. It was not a disaster after 700, 750 missiles. So around the world, they are very, very cynic, and they say, okay, the other side, the Palestinians suffered from our missile, from our bombs, and from our side, nothing happened because of the Iron Dome. Because the Iron Dome protects us from this kind of missiles. First of all, the Iron Dome is a miracle, really, because of the brain of the Israeli. Somebody say about the brain of the Jews. you know, to produce or to develop things like that is a miracle. You have to understand that they can shoot about 10 rockets, 10 missiles, and the Iron Dome will target only one of them, the only one that analyzed that this missile from the 10 is going to hit an urban area, meaning in less than seconds, this Iron Dome has to calculate, the computers has to calculate what kind of missile is going to be a threat, it's going to be a danger for our civilians. It is very, very difficult to do it in the atmosphere, a lot of fire outside, and this kind of our missiles is going to hit only the one that's going to be the danger one from the 10 or from the 20 or from the 30. So it's a miracle. It's a miracle that Israel developed. And unfortunately, we cannot sell it. Nobody wants to buy it. Only the South Korea maybe, but I am happy that there's the Iron Dome. But on the other side, on the other hand, the government, the Prime Minister, that today is the Defense Minister, is not coming to a decision to finish or to end this kind of problem in the military aspect. He preferred to go to solve the problem with negotiation and political aspects. But you have to understand that we are in a situation that if one of those missiles will hit a school, and unfortunately can be a situation that 20, 30 people will be killed or children will be killed, it changed the decision. In this time, I'm sure that the reaction will be really, really very extreme. So we are in a Zman Shaul.
I'm not sure actually.
We are
I'm not sure.
using this Iron Dome for our advantage, not to come to an extreme decision, and it gives the politician the opportunity to sit around the table, to think a lot, to try to solve the problem with negotiation and not with the armed forces.
So I only have two more questions that I'm going to ask you about Lebanon, and specifically actually not the country of Lebanon, but Hezbollah. So there are a couple of operations that my reserve brigade were called to for training, just for regular training. One of them had to do with a simulation for whether or not Jordan would remain stable. That was an interesting subject in and of itself. It's not what I want to talk about. The other was for responding and reacting to an operation undertaken by Hezbollah, whereby they would come into the north, take towns in the north, and hold towns in the north until the IDF came forward and extricated our civilians from those towns. And it wasn't that long ago. I'm sure you know about it better than I do. It was probably 3-4 years ago. And I have a problem with that because it strikes me that because of the civil war in Syria and other matters, you've got there in Hezbollah an extremely robust, practiced fighting force, very well schooled in urban combat and asymmetrical combat, veterans of several brutal campaigns, all of whom are hungry for a victory over the state of Israel. And against them, in addition to the technology, the air force, the artillery, and so on and so forth, in the final analysis, it's 18-year-old soldiers, 19-year-old soldiers from the Israel Defense Forces who are going to be sent forward to face down those people in some capacity. Is the IDF ready for that? As an 18-year-old, 19-year-old soldier fresh out of advanced training, maybe 1 or 2 missions of guarding over civilian duties and populations, ready to face down a battle-hardened, skilled terror organization that is very, very serious and dedicated about what it wishes to extract from the battlefield.
So the question is how those soldiers can.
My question is, does the average conscript soldier in the IDF stand ready to fight back against a battle-hardened Hezbollah terrorist operating inside the territory of Israel?
You know, the system in Israel, it's like when I was the commander, the division commander in the northern front line, and Gaza Strip as well. I got soldiers that 18 years old, and in 2 days, no, they come to this area after training themselves about 1 year, 1.5 years, something like that. And coming to this area, about 19 years old, not 18 years old. 18 years old, they enter to the military, practice themselves, training themselves about 1 year, something like that. Of course, if something happened, immediately they are sending to this front line, even after half a year in the military. But in the regular time, it takes about 1.5 years, and after that, they are soldiers, combat soldiers. We train them in situation like that. It's very, very tough training, and I think it's a question of the mentality, because those soldiers understand that they're fighting to protect their own land, and we don't have any opportunity to lose the war. And this is the main issue, that they have to fight, even to lose their own life, because they know that, you know, I'm living about less than 1 mile from the, what you called the West Bank. That's it. Coming here to Tel Aviv from this area, it took me about 20 minutes, 15 minutes. That's it. So the mentality and the system, how to bring these soldiers to understand that they have to fight. And I think that we give them the tools, the good training, the good weapons, how to fight with this, how to deal with these problems. And it's not only a question of these soldiers, the young soldiers. The same question is about the reserve soldiers that coming to serve only for 5-6 days. After 1, 2, 3 years, maybe 20 years, that they didn't serve in the military. I remember as a commander of the Gaza Strip, had to deal with civilian people that only on Saturday demonstrate against the government about the issue, what we have, what we lose in the Gaza Strip. I'm talking about when we have been in Gaza Strip inside, and there were a big issue in the society, what we have to do in the Gaza Strip. Of course, we were divided. The extreme people think that we have to be inside and to kill every terrorist, to kill even every child that trying to throw stone against the soldier. And the left wing, civilian, demonstrate here in Rabin Square, in every place, against the government, that we have to be outside. And suddenly, they come to serve for a few days, maximum 21 days or 1 month in the Gaza Strip, and me as a commander has to explain to them after 1-2 days that they have to change the mind And now we forget about their own opinion, left to right, and they have to deal with this situation as I want to deal with it. Not to be extreme and not to be not extreme. And the capability to put the soldier, the reserve soldier, or the 18 years old soldier in this situation, it's, of course, the capability of the commanders and the mentality of the soldiers. And of course, the training, the experience, the professionalism, and so on.
So my last question is a completely different subject. I actually don't know your own background. If you can just tell me, where did your parents come from? Were they born here?
No, my parents came from Poland, and I was 3 years ago, I was the head of delegation of the Minister of Defense that made a tour in Poland, in those kind of concentration camp in Auschwitz, and it was a very, very touchy tour. And I had the opportunity to be in Lublin and to see my parents' family in one of these kind of books in the concentration camp that they were killed there. My mother was escaped with her brother in those days. Her parents, my grandfathers, I don't know them, but they lived in Lublin, Poland. And they sent my mother and her brother, there were about 10 brothers, and they sent only them, they convinced them to escape to Russia. And she and him escaped to Russia, and they were captured by the Russia, and they were in another refugee camp in Siberia. But when they came back, nobody survived. So I was born to my parents that came from Poland, and everybody has something from this kind of experience. And that's another thing here in Israel, to try to educate the young generation about those kind of things, about the Holocaust, about what happened in those, because really, we believe that we don't have any country that we can go there. That's the only country. I can be criticized, I can say a lot against my government, but I say it only here. And I'm going outside, and I were outside, I'm very, very patriotic, very, very extreme.
So I want to ask you about that, because knowing now a bit about your family background, you were the attaché to Germany, the IDF attaché to Germany, around 99, 2000. It came up earlier in the tour, and the cadets, everybody here in the faculty had been to Auschwitz as en route to Israel. And we went to visit Ben-Gurion's home, and in Ben-Gurion's home it was explained that there was a whole dilemma as to whether or not to receive the compensation from the Germans. During the early stages of the founding of the state, relatively early stages, and the Ben-Gurion said yes, and Menachem Begin said absolutely not, and in those circumstances, and there's a phrase for this compensation, it's called, I believe it's called wieder gut machen, which means to make good again, or to make positive again. That's the German phrase for it. One, should we have accepted that? I know that it's somewhat an academic question because we did accept it in the end. But two, during your time as attaché, and if you can answer this succinctly, how strong is the relationship with Germany and how strategically important is it? And how did it feel to be an attaché to Germany, given your family history?
Explain it, really. It's very emotional, very touchy. I served there about 3 years. One of my good friends, till now, is the German Chief of General Staff. Name is General Helmut Willmann. He's a retired. It's not usual that a military defense attaché become to be a good friend of the high-rank officer in the military. And he used to come to Israel living in my home, even in those days, and when I come to visit Bonn in Germany, I'm staying with my wife in his house. When I was served there, for my children, it was really, really difficult for them to visit Germany. I'm talking about my children, the young generation. Because they heard about the stories, about watching about a lot of movies about the Holocaust, and it was not easy as an Israeli to hear the sound of the train, to see these signals like Stau, like those kind of words, and I know a little bit German, the German language. It's really, really very difficult. But in the same time, I was full motivated to show that I am high rank officer, an Israeli officer, a Jew, serving in this land. And we created really good relationships. I was the first one, because of the good relation with the Chief of General Staff, that we create some kind of exchange delegation, exchange cadets. And now it's every year there are some German cadets are coming to Israel, and we're sending cadets to Germany. For them it was very, very difficult to come to Israel. They were a little bit afraid about the reaction of the Israeli people, of the Israeli soldiers, how they will react with this relationship with the German people, the German cadets. And I had the mission, when I was serving them, to come every time before they come to Israel, to explain them about what we are feeling about the German people, and giving them the situation that they are going to be full accept. We are happy to have this kind of relationship. We don't want to forget. We educate the people here in Israel not to forget. But in the same time, we have to continue. We don't have to blame them about their own parents. But we can explain them that we are afraid that this situation can come back again. And that's what we try to do. And it's not easy. As I told you, to bring my eldest son to Germany, you know, I was in front, because of the good relationship that I created, קיבלתי עיטור הזהב. קיבלתי עיטור. I got a medal from the Minister of Defense of Germany. I was very, very proud of that. I told by telephone to my son, he was not with me there, that I gave a medal, I got a medal from the Minister of Defense. He told me, what are you proud of that? Having a medal from the German country, it's not. So this is, and I have to explain to my children that, okay, you have to remember what happened, and we don't want to come to a situation like that. And that's what motivated us to think about that every time, every minute. We don't want to be in the situation like that. Not from the German people, not from other countries, and of course not from the Arabs. We don't want to be a situation that the history is always on our mind. But in the same time, we cannot blame them because of their parents. That's what happened.
So we're going to open it to questions. We've got about 15 minutes for questions. You can fire away. You can ask about what was discussed or aspects that were not discussed by show of hands. Yes.
Jen Lopez Virginia Military Institute. You had a very pointed opinion on invading Gaza by having more troops on the ground. How do you go about letting the whole world know that and keeping your allies like okay with that, like, without like creating a bad image for Israel?
So I'm going to repeat the questions because we're on the camera and they can't necessarily hear. So the question is, given that you spoke to having a more forceful response in Gaza, including troops on the ground, how would you manage that alongside maintaining alliances overseas with people who see that but may not necessarily agree with that? Is that a fair paraphrasing?
It's not a question of to convince other people. You know, thing changes, really. Today, they have missiles, and they can hit Tel Aviv from the north and from the south, from Lebanon and from the Gaza Strip. And we are afraid to lose soldiers in the same time. But the question is how you can win the battle. This is the question. It's not that I have to convince some other countries or alliance that it's a must. Because what happened till now, it's how to, you know, we are thinking now, or we try to convince our people that the deterrence is the most important thing. But the question, who deter me? Who deter whom? We deter them, or we are afraid from them? Because of that, I'm sure that if we send the ground forces, and the ground forces, the army, will be inside, killing their leaders. I'm talking about terrorists. Being with the boots on the ground on their own headquarters or their own cities. That will be a very, very clear victory by definition. The other question will be, okay, what will be a day later? We are there. Now, we have to manage. We have to deal with the population on the ground. And that's the main question, that's what happened here. Okay, we will succeed to win the battle. What will be a day later? The alternative is to live in a situation like that. Many, many years. We can live like that. People say that we can live it forever. But I don't want to be, I don't want to live in the southern area that suffered from balloons, that every time when I send the child to the kindergarten, I don't know if he will come back home or not. That's the situation that those people are living there. And the government has to protect them. The government has to give the solution. So the solution is to win the battle, to be there. Otherwise, that's the situation. So to convince the other countries that we have to do it, it's easy. The problem is to convince ourselves.
Next question. Yes, Steph.
Good morning, sir. Major Stephanie called from the United States Air Force Academy. The United
Don't
States.
I will repeat afterwards.
I have some other problem from the artilleries, you know, I cannot hear.
Good morning. The United States has stated that its policy is that we will not negotiate with terrorists, which is perhaps simply an ideal. What is Israel's policy?
Okay, that's a great question, definitely worthy of repeating. This is Major Stephanie Culp from the United States Air Force Academy, faculty leader of the cadets from there. And she says that the United States official policy is that they will not negotiate with terrorists, which may just be an ideal, what is Israel's policy on negotiating with terrorists?
You know, the question is, you have to distinguish between some kind of situation. This kind of, I don't want to say slogan, or when we dealt, it was many years ago, and I hope that we will not come to a new situation, the terrorists captured some hostages, and we had to negotiate with terrorists. And the idea was that we are not negotiating with terrorists, meaning that we have to kill them. It was in Entebbe, it was in Ma'alot, it was here in Tel Aviv. There were many cases. I was a commander of a very special unit that belonged to the policy that deals with release hostages, because in the past it was a big issue in Israel. We suffered from some kind of terrorists that come to some kind of area and capture some kind of Israeli civilian Israel. I'm not talking about soldiers. And they were in a house or in an aeroplane or in Entebbe, and we have to deal with them. Of course, we negotiate with them, but only for tactical purposes, not to come to a solution through the negotiation and to release the terrorists and to have back the hostages. Meaning, in those times, we negotiated with them only to take some advantages, to locate our snipers, to think about these kind of things, to win some kind of time, till we come to a readiness and we attack them and kill the... So in these cases, I say, and my opinion is that we don't have to negotiate with them. But I'm talking about this kind of situation. In other situations, like we are now here in negotiate with the Palestinian as a whole to solve the problem. We cannot solve the problem without negotiating with them. We have to negotiate with them. Otherwise, we will not come to any solution. So we have to distinguish between a tactical situation that I say that we don't have to negotiate when we are talking about terrorism, hostages, and so on, and we are talking about to solve a problem, a big problem, so we have to negotiate with them. And who are them? People think that they are the terrorists, and people think that they are politicians. They are the leaders of them. The leader of the Gaza Strip, the leader today, is one of the big terrorists that was in our jail, and we released them, and now is the head of the Hamas. And we negotiate. You know, we don't want the official. The official statement is not to negotiate with them. But in the same time, we give them a lot of money, $50 million and $30 million with whom? With the Hamas. So we have to negotiate. If we want to come to a solution, we have to negotiate with everybody, even if we are terrorists. This is my opinion. This is not the official statement. You can read the books of Bibi Netanyahu, and Bibi Netanyahu say that we don't have to negotiate with terrorism. But what he's doing now, he negotiates with them through the Egyptian.
So just to give a little bit more context before I come to the next question, the paradigmatic example of what General Tzuker spoke about is the rescue in Entebbe in 1976, when Rabin said, negotiate, and at the same time he tasked his chief of staff and minister of defense with coming up with a plan that was not actually in existence prior to them being called upon to draw it together. And so that negotiation was very much tactical with a view to, in parallel, bringing about this mission that's largely thought of as one of the most daring missions in military history. So, next question. Yes?
Sir, Cadet Matthew Montar from the United States Military Academy. You mentioned that you would prefer to have boots on the ground in Gaza, and you're a supporter of the New State Plan, correct, sir?
הוא מכיר שאתה חבר ב-New State Solution.
No.
So he's asking about that in the context of it. How do you know about that, by the way? You saw the website?
What?
I
don't know.
Okay, so he knows that you're part of the New State Working Group. Okay, yeah.
But you're familiar with it, sir?
Yes, he's very familiar. Yeah.
How would the boots on the ground contribute to the creation of this new state? Because one of the ideals that we learned about was that the Palestinians would have the autonomy to create their own government and choose to do it as they want. But this Israeli presence in the region, how would that affect it, or what situation would arise from that?
You got the question?
כן. תסביר.
Yeah, the question is, given that you advocate for boots on the ground in the Gaza Strip, and given that you also sit as with the New State Solution, how do boots on the ground, how can you reconcile boots on the ground with bringing about an autonomous independent state in the Gaza Strip? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that fair paraphrasing?
Yeah, that's...
Okay, you with me?
No, this. When we are talking about to solve a military problem, we have to solve it. Meaning, if they shoot about 750 missiles, we have to solve the problem. If they burn our agricultural fields, we have to solve the problem. They will not sit around the table if they think that they can destroy our country, that they can win the battle. So we have to bring them to a situation that they are not coming to a solution, because they think always that maybe it will come a time that they will win the battle and we will escape from this country, or I will lose my house. So in the same time, I want to show them that there is not a possibility like that. There is no chance. They can hit 750 missiles, they can do this and that, and we have to be very, very strong. Meaning that we can hit them and we can win the battle. How we win the battle, how we will bring them to the conclusion that it doesn't make any sense to hit our countries, our citizens by missiles, because they are going to suffer more than us. But in the same time, I believe that we have to come to a solution. We want peace. I don't want to bring our soldiers to conquer לכבוש.
To conquer.
To conquer Gaza Strip. I don't want to be there. Only because I don't have a chance. I want to be there, but to go out immediately. To show them that they cannot win the battle. But in the same time, I want to create a situation to bring them to the peace table and to speak about peace. And when we think about how we can create the situation that they can think that they can create their own country, I think that the New State Solution is a good solution for them. It's the first step for them to create a state in Gaza, and not only in Gaza, maybe to extend the territory in Sinai, to convince the Egyptian to do it, to create for them good economic situation, and to give them some kind of hope. Because today, to live in Gaza as a Palestinian is without any, well, they have to do it. They cannot go to a movie. If they want to visit a country abroad, it's almost impossible. So to give them some hope, they have to think about them, and we want to give them the opportunity. What the meaning of opportunity? Economic improvement, some kind of a bigger statement. There are a lot of problems about the West Bank, about this and about that. But if we are in a war situation, I want to win the battle, meaning to be with the boots on the ground, and after that to think what's going a day later. But in the same time, I want to speak, I want to create good condition for peace. I want peace, really. I don't want Gaza Strip. I want to give them a state, but the question, what kind of state? A state that we can live together, and not to think that they build a state only in the meantime, and after that they want to create their own military, their own tanks, their own air force to destroy our country. I hope that it was the answer.
It was more geared toward the animosity, like the feeling. Will that feeling between the Israelis and the Palestinians, will that it'll be hurt because of the fighting forces there? So
He wants to know if you go and you are determined to win a military campaign, does that victory militarily destroy the opportunity for goodwill between the peoples? I think is that right?
So. I don't think so. I want to give them. Until now, we didn't succeed to do it because they think that we become a little bit weak and weak and weak and weak, and I have to show them that this kind of solution to hit our citizens, to hit our cities, it doesn't make any sense because they are suffering more than us. And that's why I want to show them that the idea to hit our cities, it doesn't bring them any kind of solution. They have to think in another way to create a new state for them, to improve the situation for their own people, And to create this kind of situation, they have to think out of the box, to take the opportunity maybe from the United States, a lot of money, not only money to build the tunnels, money to improve the situation for their own people, to build industrial companies, industrial factories, to build a harbor, to build an airport, and so on and so on.
Thank you, General. So this is the end of our session. Now, I don't know if there's someone who wishes to come forward. If there is, I'm going to invite them forward. Is there that person? They want to make a swift presentation to you. Before I bring you forward, I just want to say thank you. Very informative, very interesting, very candid. We appreciate it.